and welcome to Diversity, a show brought to you by the Town of East Hampton Anti-Bias Task Force. My name is Andrew Visconti, and I have the pleasure today to welcome two guests. Adam Fine, the school superintendent for the Town of East Hampton, and Mateo David. Mateo graduated high school recently. And we already got to speak with Mateo in a previous episode of the show because Mateo unfortunately spent some time in jail. And it was interesting to get Adam Fine and Mateo to talk about what is the role of schools when it comes to jail, and is there a specific role that the schools have to try to keep kids out of jail? So tell us, Adam, what is the situation in East Hampton? A lot of kids end up in jail?
No, I mean, it's a good question, and it obviously depends on the group of students. But prior to my experience as the superintendent, I was the principal of East Hampton High School for 10 years, and each grade level differed. When Mateo and I were talking a little bit before, and East Hampton is a little different than the challenging surroundings he's grown up in. I would say from our standpoint at a school in East Hampton, we have really become centralized support network in the town. We've kind of deal with everything and work with kids on every level. The school has been involved with the courts, with kids, and I've witnessed kids getting arrested for a variety of reasons at the school. But we view ourselves as advocates for our kids. And one of the things I always used to say as principal was, if you're going to make a mistake, it's a good place to making it in the school. Because once you graduate and you're on your own, there's not many people to reflect with. We work with the kids. We try to get them back on the right track. Again, we're not talking about a large number of kids who are ending up incarcerated or in the the criminal justice system. But we do have kids that end up in outreach program up the island a little bit, maybe for substance abuse issues. We've had some students involved with crimes outside of the school who have ended up incarcerated, which we've had to support, and then those kids come back to the school. So we kind of take each case individually. We're very blessed. We have a board and a community that supports a strong mental health and social emotional program and staffing. So we're able to provide resources, but that doesn't always prevent, children from making bad choices. And, I know I'm rambling a little bit, but one of the things I always have said to parents is kids don't develop their prefrontal cortex of their brain until they're 25. So they're apt to make mistakes and repeat mistakes on an ongoing basis. I have a child. I have 4 children. My oldest is 18 years old, and then my second oldest is going to be 16 years old. And the level of mistakes that they make ongoing, and they're great kids. I love them to death. But some of the judgments, you say, almost pinch yourself. So as a school, I think for us, it's to act as a sounding board for parents, for the kids to come to.
Mateo, you were in East Hampton a long time ago, and then you've spent a few hours here this time. What environment did you grow up in? Where did you grow up in? And what are the challenges of that particular community?
I grew up in Medellin, Colombia. When I was 5, I moved to Long Island, specifically in Brentwood. I spent most of my childhood in Brentwood, and at first, since I was too young, I didn't really understand what was going on. But once I got older, I started realizing, a lot of crime would happen. I started realizing that Brentwood's not an okay place compared to other places in the island. But at the same time, Brentwood's not really bad. I mean, it has its downfalls and it has its issues, but at the end of the day, it's a good neighborhood that just happens to have some people that, commit crimes here and there. But personally, I'd say growing up in Brentwood, it wasn't too bad. I never had an issue with gangs. I never did none of that. What I honestly like to think of it is, if you put yourself in a bad situation, then it's going to be bad. If you get yourself in a gang, then you're gonna have problems with enemies, stuff like that. But if you just stay out the way and you just do you and you stay low key and humble, then nothing's gonna happen to you. You'll do fine.
But forgive my question, how easy is it to stay out of gangs?
To my understanding, I say it's easy. I mean, it's not like someone's gonna approach you and be like, "Hey, you want to join our gang?" No, I say it has to do a lot of with friends. If let's just say you have a friend that's in a gang, you know that friend's gonna ask you, "Do you want to join?" And then that's up to you. It's up to you if you want to take that route and risk basically dying or going to jail every day, or if you just want to have your life how it is and just live calm, without any worries. Because that's when I was in jail, I realized that that's a lot of problems that kids in there have. They have to worry, oh, if this guy catches me, I'm gonna get beat up, I'm gonna get humiliated in public. But for example, like me, I never had to worry about none of that because I never had enemies. I was very unknown in Brentwood. I never talked to anyone there. I just went to school and that's it, stayed home. The only friends I had was in Ronkonkoma, but Ronkonkoma was honestly, it was just different. It was a little better than Brentwood. The thing that sucks about the Connecticut district is that a lot of kids like to portray themselves as gangsters and all that, but in reality they're not. They're just acting like someone they're not, and that's not good because sooner or later they make a mistake and they end up in jail. They're gonna be crying for their moms. They're gonna be wishing they could take it all back, but it's too late.
Adam, Mateo mentioned the fact that he grew up in Medellin, Colombia. Out here, we have a large Latino population, and in the high school, the population that is quite visible. Is there any connection in your experience between having to integrate because you're an outsider and the risk of not staying the path?
That's a great question, and I've asked myself that question year after year, and the integration of specifically Spanish-speaking students in our school. Obviously, East Hampton is an extremely diverse school district. Approximately 55% of our students are Latino. About 30% of that are ENL, so which is Spanish is their primary language, and then we acclimate and teach English. Uh, the students, the language tends to be the biggest barrier, and I'll speak specifically from the high school experience, where a lot of these issues come on because you have late arrivals. So somebody, maybe Mateo's age, comes to America for the first time when he's 17 years old, fluent in Spanish. The English is getting acclimated at an older age is very difficult. We've worked really hard to acclimate our students, our ENL program, our Spanish speaking liaison, our teachers, of bringing all the kids in and making them feel part of the school and not keeping them outside just because of the language. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, and every year we ask ourselves that to why, you might have a group of students congregate together, and the reason is because they're speaking Spanish, and how can we, acclimate those school students to the school better? We have a very robust Spanish language program, so even our English speakers are speaking Spanish. We have a dual language program in our elementary school, so we're teaching kids in English and in Spanish. That's actually an ENL program, and our English speakers actually benefit from that program. So it is a challenge for us, but we're very cognizant and very sensitive to keeping kids separate and isolated. Our ENL program is integrated in the school. It used to not be that way. So we used to have segregated classrooms. So meaning they might have been in a wing. It's a high school, so it's departmentalized. So you have social studies here. What we've done is integrated the classrooms in the different subject areas, which had it been the case, that's been years in an evolution, to say the least.
Mateo, we were talking earlier today that you've been to Colombia, and I presume there might be some of our viewers thinking, oh, Colombia, Medellin, drugs, no wonder the kid got in trouble. And yet you were saying that the Medellin it's a beautiful place, it's a safe place where you feel grounded there, correct?
Yes.
Tell us about your Colombia.
Medellin, it's a good city. It's very tourist attractive. You see a lot of tourists going to visit the city. You know, to visit the Jeddas Park. It's not as what they say it is. Don't get me wrong though. It used to be a war zone back in like '85 to like 1992 when Escobar was alive. But after that, it changed. It became a better city. They just tried to forget and move on from like all the terrorism that was going on at the time. Nowadays, you go to Medellin and you're greeted by friendly people. You know, you don't gotta worry that someone's just gonna randomly kill you like how it was back in the day. To me, every time I've been there, I never felt worried about getting robbed or whatever because everyone there is friendly. You know, everyone there like is social. People aren't like mean to you for no reason. Like everyone always tries to help each other out there. And to me, I'd say I love going there because it's like a whole different world from here. You know, people are more interact with you more. There's more things to do. It's cleaner there in a way. You know, and they're not so disorganized as some people may say it is, because the media follows by what like they see, and they see these pictures of Escobar, all these people dying, all this research, but in reality, it's not like that anymore. Time changes a lot of things, and it definitely changed Medellin. You know, my mom actually grew up while Escobar was alive, and she always told me it was a war zone back then. You know, everyone was always staying home. Car bombs were being placed all over the place to try to kill like important politicians that were against Escobar. And Escobar even had a moment where he was just killing random people to try to get the government to, accept what he wants to do. But nowadays, you don't have to worry about that. There's nothing. There is drug problems in Medellin, but there's drug problems everywhere. There's drug problems here, in Europe, every single place. So it's not what people say it is. It's way different than that. You just have to go there and witness it yourself.
Adam, your school district organizes field trips to local jail, I believe Riverhead.
Yes.
What is the purpose of those field trips?
Well, it's embedded in our criminal justice class, which is a class kids can elect to take. It's an elective. Obviously teaches basic criminal law, criminal justice, and so on. The idea is to bring kids and expose them to jails. I mean, for better or for worse, we're actually pretty close to a pretty, big jail in Riverhead and Yaphank, which we hear about, we read about a lot. So one of the ideas is to bring the kids in, let them see what the jail is, what it's about. Maybe they're going to pursue a career in law enforcement, maybe corrections, but also it's a deterrent. It acts as a deterrent to kids to say, this is where you could possibly end up if you make a poor choice, a poor decision at some point. Most of the kids who come back from it are like, a little surprised in what they've seen. You grow up in this beautiful bucolic place on the east end of Long Island, and the next thing you know, you're walking through Riverhead, and or you're in Yaphank. It's different, and it serves a great purpose. I mean, because on two fronts, as I said, you're seeing it for the negative sides of it and being in there. But you're also, hey, is this a career I want to pursue? And not only, I shouldn't just say regular law, people require public defenders, criminal defense attorneys too. So we have kids who are also interested in that. But I think it's great. It's worth the day's trip. It's easy for us to get to, which not many things are for us. But it's eye-opening for a lot of our kids. A lot of our kids have never gone over the canal, to be honest with you, and seen other parts of Long Island, for example.
Yeah. Mateo, you unfortunately ended up spending 8 months in Yaphank at the Suffolk County Correctional Facility. You've never been to Riverhead, right?
No, I've never been.
But probably you heard stories and you have a sense of how different the two facilities supposedly are?
Yes, I did. Throughout my stay at Yaphank, the corrections officers, they'd often like have conversations with me about Riverhead because some minors that would turn 18 in the E-Pod, which is where we were at, would end up going to Riverhead, and they tell us that Riverhead's horrible. It's very dirty in there. Everything's old and it's maximum security, so everything is very like, I guess they make sure everything is strict. Everything has to be really strict there, and it's basically jail cells with a very small hallway that you just walk to, and there's a TV. It's horrible. You know, when I got out, I saw pictures of what it actually looks like in there, and I was shocked because compared to where I was at, it looked horrible. You know, and COs every day told me stories that a lot of bad people were in there because the thing about Riverhead is Riverhead's there for people with serious charges, including murder, very bad charges, stuff like that. So it definitely is a lot worse, and it's good that the school district takes them specifically to Riverhead because that's the worst like jail in all of Long Island. It's worse than Nassau County, and I know that for a fact.
Mateo and I know each other because I met him in jail where I lead a writing program in Yaphank. So I know the environment where Mateo spent 8 months. But please share with the viewers, what is it like? What is this E-Pod like?
It's a two-story dorm where each individual gets their own cells. It's not bad. It's pretty good compared to what general population is. You get your own cell for privacy, 2 TVs, you could watch, a specific amount of channels.
Not in your specific cell. It's
Yeah.
2 TVs
Yeah.
in the
Yeah,
recreational area.
Yeah, and there's a basketball court, and it's clean. It's everything looks modern. And there's never like days where it looks bad in there. The only thing that makes it look bad is the fact that you're locked up. But in reality, it's almost like I say a shelter in a way, because it's honestly not bad at all. Like it is bad because you're spending your life in there, but at the end of the day, it was honestly a blessing to be there because most COs would tell us that the minors that turn 18, they wish they could come back there. They pray to God that like something could happen that they could come back because once they get to general population, it's horrible there. It's just a giant room with 50 bunk beds. You're sleeping in front of someone, behind someone, and next to someone, both left and right. So it was definitely comfortable, but it just sucked because you're a minor in jail. That's not good. You should be living your teenage years outside, enjoying your life, not sitting inside jail waiting to serve like 5 years upstate.
Adam, is there any particular reason the high school does field trips to Riverhead as opposed to Yaphank? How
I
does
think
it work?
Riverhead is the program. I'm not, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not 100% sure. I believe the program is at Riverhead.
And what is the program?
It's just their jail orientation, jail trips, which pack up pretty quickly, because so a lot of the schools in Suffolk County do this trip.
Right.
From their program, so I believe that's the issue. Listen, I mean, we've talked about, I've had discussions on bringing kids to Rikers Island to see that, but I don't think they have a comprehensive tour. People have said that's, which, you think Riverhead, and then you think that's another level of, to kind of say what Mateo, I've heard the same type of things.
I actually know why they only specifically do it in Riverhead because CO actually told me. It's because basically in Riverhead they all have their own cells, so they could just lock the inmates in. But here in Yaphank they don't have cells. It's
That
all
makes sense.
open dorm rooms, so they can't just bring a bunch of minors into an open dorm room when like all the adults are roaming free. That's the main reason.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. Adam, do you have any particular questions for Mateo?
I guess, from hearing your story and reading about it, the article was terrific. I mean, it really was terrific.
Forgive me, Adam's making reference to an article that Mateo wrote while in jail, while in my program, and I asked for his interest and permission to have it published in the East Hampton Star, which was published sometime during the summer. It was edited down. It was almost 2,000 words, and we had to cut it down to 1,300 words. But other than that, it was public. It was Mateo's voice, and it was a very powerful article. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's quite all right. I guess my question for you was, and not having you to relive the evening in which the activity took place. At any point during the decision-making process, when you were deciding I'm going to engage in, this fight, or I don't know, maybe it was an assault or whatever was characterized. Did you ever think of the consequences in your head? Did that run through your mind, or did that hit you more of when you were arrested?
Not at all. When the whole process was going down, that we were going to do what the crime that we were going to commit, I didn't think at all because I was just full of anger because the guy that we beat up, he disrespected me in a lot of ways. And the thing about me that I'm still to this day working on is when I get mad, I just block everything out of my brain and I act stupid. I look back at it and I wish I thought for a minute, wait, if I do this, I'm going to risk myself going to jail. But see, at that time, I didn't take jail, none of that serious because I just thought, oh, I'm 16 years old, I'll get away with it. They'll probably just give me more probation time. But I was completely wrong. But definitely, no, by the time I thought about my mistakes, I was already in jail and it was too late.
It's a good point. It's a good point.
I guess, Mateo and Adam, I guess a lot of our viewers might think, well, if you have a strong family behind you, you don't end up in jail. Is that so?
It's definitely not. Definitely not. I say this because it was my fault. My family tried to tell me a lot of times that I got to be careful with what I do because at the end of the day, whatever I do, I could end up doing something really bad and end up in jail, and then it's too late. But I never took them serious because I always like you said in this previous interview, it's like jail is so far away from you. For me, I thought jail was like a whole nother world that I wouldn't ever end up in. But they tried a lot. They tried to always tell me do the right thing. But like I said, it comes back to my anger because once I'm mad, like I don't think. I act completely like someone that I'm not, which is why I ended up there. But they tried their hardest, and it was my fault because I was really ignorant at the time. I didn't even want to live with them. I was living with my friend, and I had no boundaries, no limits. I got to do whatever I want, but I ended up facing a very bad consequence.
How do you deal with your anger now?
There's been moments where I've gotten really mad, and I knew for a minute that if I act up, I'm gonna end up doing something I'm gonna regret. But nowadays, I think about jail. That's what I do when I'm really mad. I just calm down. I distance myself from everyone. I just think, why I'm not gonna do this because I'm gonna end up back in jail, and I can't have that happening again. I look at this scar that I have on my leg, which is a scar that I got from the shackles that they used to put me in when I go to court, and I just be like, I can't do this. I have to stay positive and I have to stay calm no matter what.
Adam, what do you think is the role of families?
I mean, listen, the research all says intact families, supportive families and whatnot. But I'll tell you this, I've seen very intact families here on the East End, very wealthy, well-to-do and their kids struggled, whether it be with substance abuse, aberrant behaviors, and these parents, they were just at their wits' end. They didn't know. They turned to the school, and then you're hopefully being able to provide supports and recommendations for kids. It's easier in East Hampton just because of the resources we have. To provide individual support to reach out to these families. When you're looking at, Mateo comes to I agree, his assessment of where, Brentwood is, Brentwood's a wonderful place. No, it's just big. There's lots of people. It's a lot more, the population density is different than here, when our middle school has 200 and, whatever, 60 kids. Our high school's just about at 1,000 and you're heavily staffed. It's easier to provide supports with people in the community. You have all the sending districts. The kids are in these small environments. It's, when you're in some of the Up Island schools are bigger. It's harder when you have 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. Brentwood's the largest district in the state of New York besides the city districts. So, I think there are 15,000 kids in that. We have 1,800 in the whole district. It's a lot different, and stuff. And it's not a commentary on the community. The communities are great, they're supportive, but there's a lot, mental health and supporting families, it's important. It's easier for me to do that than some other communities.
Mateo, I'm curious. April 25th, you left jail, you went home. Walk us through those hours when you got back home.
Basically, I woke up the 25th like at 3 in the morning, and I was filled with so many thoughts. I just kept saying to myself, like, by the time this day's over, I'm gonna be home. You know, I kept like thinking, and I was kind of going insane because I was locked in my cell, so I couldn't go out or none of that. So I just kept thinking the whole time, you know, trying to go back to sleep, but I couldn't. But luckily, I did. And then I woke up early because the CO left the breakfast at my cell. And then I asked the CO if I could come out because I have to get ready for court. I came out, I got dressed, I took a shower, and then after that, I started packing all my belongings, you know, my blankets, all that. And then I walked out, you know, and the CO told me it's time to go, you got court. And, you know, I just took one final look at my cell and I just, you know, I felt a huge sigh of relief. I was excited, you know. The other minors in there, you know, they all said goodbye and that they wished me the best of luck. And I said thank you. I left the jail with the warrant squad because they transferred minors in and out from court back to jail. And the car ride there, I was just nervous, just waiting, you know, just hoping that I could see this judge so he could finally release me. And we got to the courthouse. They put me in the cell, the waiting cell, for like almost 4 hours. I was in there with nothing. I had a book, but I couldn't read it because I was so nervous. I was just praying that something didn't come up like last time and the judge would have to delay my court date. But after 4 hours of waiting, the court officers escorted me to the courtroom, and the judge sentenced me, and you know, accepted my release and signed me off. And then I went back to the warrant squad room in Central Islip, where my parents had to sign me off because I'm a minor. And then the feeling of just walking out of that warrant squad room where I first came in when I first got arrested, I felt so happy. You know, my whole family was there. My grandfather started crying, you know, because he just couldn't believe that it was something that he wanted. It was a beautiful moment. You know, I personally didn't cry. I was just super happy. I couldn't stop smiling.
What a great story. Thank you, Mateo, for sharing your story. It's great that you own that part of your life as opposed to pretend that it never happened. It would have been better had it not happened, but you own it, and that's wonderful. And thank you, Superintendent Fine, for being part of this conversation and helping us better understand how the role of schools when it comes to keeping the kids out of jail. Thank you.